You are watching all the episodes so far of Deadmont Deadplay, so leave a like here to support the project and let's go. The anime starts in a sort-off dungeon. The knights are terribly frightened, but despite the sinister aura in the cave, a knight who appears to be very powerful approaches. Several magic seals are summoned from the dungeon and execute several soldiers. They retreat, but a soldier is not intimidated and goes to face the atrocity that awaits him. His name is Lugrit. He is a knight of the church who obliterates calamities. The skull calamity attacks, but is quickly blocked, where healing mages provide support, and the knight also uses magic seals to dominate its power and go after the creature. The creature cannot contain itself and throws several weapons at the knight with its magic seals, but Lugrit is not intimidated and blocks everything until his sword gets stuck in the ceiling. And the creature takes the opportunity to use a powerful concentration of dark mana on the knight. With it, he summoned a dragon of darkness. At that moment, everyone was afraid, but the knight who was focused on his objective uses a mana on his sword and splits the dragon in two with great ease. While everyone was apprehensive about whether he would succeed, Masila intimidates him by summoning an army of soldier skulls. The creature is none other than a necromancer. Everyone was afraid, but the girl trusted the knight faithfully, who used magic once again on himself, making his eyes emanate a scarlet aura. While memories bathed him of that bloody night, where the souls of the soldiers who went into battle to protect him whispered to him that he should have gone with them too, and those same souls now reside in the demonic army he saw in front of him. The knight can see the souls sacrificed by the necromancer, and the creature is surprised. He retorts about the evil eyes he sees in the young knight's features, and one of the wizards in the rear explains that some people have these eyes, they are born with powers. That is why they seek the church, because they can see the souls of everyone they kill, including creatures. Others enjoy manipulating them and becoming necromancers. And we return to the fierce battle, with both sides using magic seals and delivering several blows, blocking them together, until the creature's true form is revealed. A brain in a jar with seals, being protected by the immense skull of bones and a completely dark aura. And the knight goes after the creature. A battle of which magic seal would be the strongest begins. The rearguard mage empowers the knight, who gains brutal speed, and goes after the creature, aiming directly at the brain shape, and finally piercing the layer of magic and taking the creature along with that hostile climate, all this to free that land from the executions that the creature was causing. Then the boy now has the voice of a boy. He wakes up, cannot release his voice. We see red stains on his shirt. He is totally confused. He goes outside and apparently now resides in the city of modern Japan. Could this be a reverse isekai, or perhaps an isekai within an isekai? The boy walks through the streets, and another person who was monitoring with a drone quickly calls another person. He tells them to cancel the collection of that body and that the target is alive, and wonders how the hell he used to live. The boy now has a new vision of the world, trying to understand where he is, and he realizes that the children seem healthy and lively, different from what he saw in his world. But he quickly wonders what will happen to that world, and hopes that there is still a prosperous future in that world, even if he cannot return. Police officers stop him, and he does not understand anything, but in a matter of seconds he begins to pull information from that body, and begins to understand the dialect of the police officers, which in this case would be Japanese. He recognizes that his name is Polka, and the police officers see him as a foreign child and quickly become concerned about the wound that resides on his neck. Another girl appears out of nowhere, knocks out the police officers with a kick and tells them to run away, until, when at the end of his break a girl talks to him, memories begin to appear in a kind of distorted way in his vision there in his head, while the girl is very nice to him. Until she turns him upside down, throws him in the air, and catches him hugging his face and telling him to relax, that he is not a ghost, because he still has heat in his body. He is confused and thanks her, but she says he does not have to thank her, because in the next few moments she will execute him, and she pulls out a crowbar with red stains. Apparently, the same stains on the boy's shirt, and it is revealed to us that she was the one the man from before was talking to on the phone. She is a hitman and they make their living this way. The boy reasoned what happened while hiding in an abandoned building and sees that in this world he cannot see spirits, there are very few elements in the air, and that the body has almost no power, being a terrible receptacle. But the girl interrupts him by throwing several daggers and knives at the window. He manages to react, but his body is slow and does not keep up. But he blocks the attacks and runs away while he is frustrated because he thought this was a safe world. He is hit right in the leg by a dagger, but he is determined. He always wanted to be in a world like this, and he is not going to give up so easily now. He throws the dagger towards the girl after removing it from her leg and runs away, but she gets very excited because no one had intimidated her before, and she goes after him, who later manages to knock him down again. and she explains that this place is very famous in her field and that Yakuza use it for some things there that involve people turning into ghosts, and while he leans against the wall he confirms her theory, using the evil eye and seeing a room covered in spirits. The girl makes fun of his life and gets angry. She goes after him, and he quickly uses his power manipulating the souls around to summon a magic seal and telling him not to take life as a game, because they are actually his little toy, brutally piercing the girl with his summon. At first I thought the knight had become corrupted, but after seeing the summoning magic I realized, and in the other world, the knight who I thought would be the boy and had switched bodies, actually says he is not sure if he managed to finish off the creature, because at the final moment he felt that his magic had ended. So yes friends, the creature was reincarnated in the other world. What a plot twist. The magician tells him to be proud because he saved the world from the creature, and he fearfully says he hopes so. And back in Japan, now the necromancer has regained consciousness perfectly and thanks the assassin for having executed that boy who was the vessel, and for having taken him to a place so full of magic, and that there, yes, perhaps he could finally lead a peaceful life. And he says that now the game is over, no more running away, and that now they will play reapers in a game of death. Simply sensational. But he prepares his seals and tells the girl to stop pretending and that he knows she is alive, and calls her an enchanting assassin. In this case he meant enchanting magic. Silence fills the room, and he realizes that she wasn't actually faking it, and he begins to be stunned. In the opening video we see Calamity's childhood. She was sold by her parents to sorcerers, and since then she roamed through various territories, until finally, after a war, everyone she accompanied ended up being executed. Now she was just looking for a place where she could live in silence, but she came across some orphans there in that cave and took care of them, bringing them to her reality, wanting only a peaceful life, living there with them now. But the religion and the kingdoms of that land accused him of being impure and brought the war to them. Thus, annihilating all those poor orphans, the calamity could not be contained. He had his revenge right there, seeing the faces of those damn soldiers burn with the flames, thus making them pay. And over time, that cave that was his place for the children now became a den full of bones, but still he wanted peace, so he studied and waited for centuries until they could finally someone execute him. Thus concluding his plan when the hero thug from the last episode attacked him, and thus activating his reincarnation magic. And back in the present he is still shocked that he accidentally executed her and looks for ways to revive her, but he is unsuccessful, and this was being filmed there by that guy with the drone. Her colleague is 100% freaked out by that situation and sends a video to others on his team to try to better understand what is happening. Meanwhile, we see the past of the girl who was executed. She was just a little girl, so small, and a murderer broke into her house and executed her parents with a knife. From there, you can already understand that she is not very well and where all this insanity in her mind comes from, but years later she found the bastard, and now she is known as Zaki, the killer of killers. And she finally ended it there because the guy deserved it, but her sanity has already gone down the drain and now she enjoys executing murderers. So after she completes her goal in life, she decides to see if she can execute a good person too, because until now she has only executed murderers, and that's when she accepted that mission to execute the boy that the calamity ended up reincarnating in her body later. And that's when she did what she did, and this crazy woman who later celebrated for being able to execute any kind of person, even a good person, she reflects on how in life no one can be happy in that world in which she lives and that the others live there on her team, and that now she decides to do her ultimate test. She wants to know if she could execute herself too. I'm saying that this girl's sanity is long gone, but right at the beginning of the attempt she was interrupted there because her mission is not over yet, and she's like, "What do you mean the mission is not over?" And the guy reveals that the boy is walking around the city, even with his neck. Yeah, you saw it, and anyway what you saw in the previous episode happened. And now we go back to her waking up, and Calamity managed to revive her with magic. She's now completely confused, but she accepts that reality well, with that crazy, stranded way she always has. Anyway, we see her boss and several other assassins prowling around the room towards the two with their weapons, and then the boss hugs her warmly, but not so warmly because she reveals that the girl has no pulse, is freezing, and Calamity completes that she would be a zombie. All this in a very comical scenario there between them. And finally we meet the drone guy. He's a businessman who sells information he collects via drone, and he doesn't look very good there after witnessing that whole supernatural situation, right? Everything that happened there, but he tries to be optimistic and presents his whole life there for us, to the point where his optimism is even comical there. And finally, the Calamity was there trying hard to revive the girl, and everyone arrives. There are those introductions. The boss asks everyone to wait there and lower their weapons. He explains and finally reveals that only a sorcerer will be needed when she wakes up, because he managed to keep her brain, soul and body intact. However, everyone is like, "Sorcerer? Magic?" And he was like, "Yeah, it went bad, right?" He mentions the name of some city that no one has heard of, asks if there are wizards, and she says that he is the first real one she has seen, because in that world there are only charlatans, and he thinks for a moment and tells everyone the series, that it was all just a collective hallucination of everyone while they collect their magic. And then the boss turns to him seriously and says, "Wow, you really did that, my friend," and then he takes out his magic around him and says in an intimidating tone, that it would be good if everyone agreed that it was all just a hallucination, all that fear. But the boss asks for some time to think, and he agrees there in good faith. In the meantime, the sounds of sirens echo around the room, but the technology guy, who we'll call the drone guy, bring the images there and talk about a fire, what's going on there in a clandestine daycare, and Calamity asks for more information. The boss asks why you want to know if you don't have any involvement with this, but reveals there that the daycare is clandestine and takes care of the children of the women of the night and the Yakuza who ended up being executed, and Calamity reveals that he has been burned many times with a very serious and somber tone, and says that no child should go through that pain. The boss agrees and tells the guy with the drone to give him all the support he needs to get to the daycare. Then Calamity jumps off the building and uses his magic with his skeleton arms so he can fly over the buildings like he was a real Spider-Man. And there's something to talk about, the guy knew how to be stylish like a real comic book hero. He could even be a candidate for Boku no Hero. So when he arrives at the place there, he is surrounded by people and firefighters, but he quickly uses his magic to move to the building there quickly so that the people there don't see him. Arriving there, he comes across the orphans huddled on the ground and asks if they are the parents of those children, those shadows that hovered over the orphans, and he asks them for help in this case. He goes with some skeletons and asks them to take possession of the skeletons there. People see the skeletons from the window and are surprised, but the children can only see their parents, and, with their help, the Calamity uses its magic to camouflage its giant skeleton arm there and finally saves those children there and quickly leaves the building once again without being seen. But social networks are already circulating some images of skulls and the giant skeleton arm, but the drone guy is relieved that at least the children there are okay. So after thinking about it for a while, because he doesn't understand how the guy treated the assassin's life there as if it were just a toy, but the orphans were super valuable to him, he says not to mess with this guy because there's no way of knowing what his next move will be. The boss tells them come back because the killer girl is going to wake up. Anyway, back to the present here, right? Because this anime ends up taking many turns between past and future, and I confess that this even caught my attention, and I like anime like this. If you know of any here, comment in the comments. So the Calamity reflects what could be done to have peace there in that world, since it is clearly not a peaceful world, right? The boss exchanges an idea there with him and says that if he wants to have peace, he needs money, and asks there what he wants, and he says that then in that case he wants money and power, and for that he will use there his power of necromancy, since he is the only one in this world who has this magic manipulation, and that he will use this to gain money and power so that he can finally have his beloved peace in an absolute and undisturbed way. And the boss says that she will help him have this peace. In this case she will put people so that he can adjust to this new world. In this case it would be the zombie assassin and the drone guy, and they both look surprised thinking, don't bring me into this story, man. But it's the assassin's headquarters. The girl sees that the skeletons were leaked on social media, and the Calamity was already using them to help move to the headquarters in a very comical way. Anyway, the drone guy and the assassin help him settle in there in that residence, and the killer sympathizes nicely there with the guy, and he thanks them for being there helping him feel at home. Then the drone guy asks about the vessel's family, and he says that she is the head of the assassins, and said to send letters from time to time saying that he is traveling on a journey of self-knowledge, and by doing this everything will be fine. And the drone guy says that it is a very dirty tactic to cover up murder, and now the Calamity is living there in that building from before, that had several Yakuzas who were murdered, and that is surrounded by spirits. And the Calamity says that she does not understand much about this world, but that she is happy that there is no religion there that existed in her world, because she considers him an aberration, and hunted him until the end of his life, and that her name there was God of Corpses, and of course the crazy woman there murdered the name, and revealed that now he will be able to have peace in this world. But she wanted to think that the one who hired the execution of the vessel is, but the drone guy says that he does not receive that kind of information, and the head of the assassins asks to keep it confidential in exchange for his stay in that abandoned building. The drone guy then wonders if he isn't afraid of being close to the assassin, and he says no because he wasn't the one she executed, and says that the receptacle also asked him to forgive the assassin, leaving the drone guy stunned, and then says that he imbued the receptacle's soul in that little drone, and the drone guy is even more surprised. So the Calamity decides to see how he will make money now, and the crazy woman there tells him to become a thief or an assassin. He refuses, but she convinces him otherwise, saying that he would have it very easy, and he ends up accepting a job that was supposed to be for her, to kill an assassin from a gang that was after the client. The girl then goes to the place where the assassins are, and the client reveals that they are friends of that guy who killed her parents. She is already excited, so she goes sneakily, but they were already waiting for her and go after her, but they don't have the slightest chance. She is very fast and distributes several kicks and several blows and finishes off everyone within her reach, until she takes 2 shots in the back like the one who shot her himself when she was there with her guard down. He reveals that he was already there setting up that ambush and that he set all of this up to avenge their boss, who would be the assassin who killed her parents, and she finished him off purely out of karma. Then the Calamity appears behind and says that he understood everything, and reveals that Misaki, who is the assassin, is now a zombie and it won't be that easy to defeat her. She gets up smiling and pulls the leg of a scoundrel there, throwing him away. The drone guy asks if he knew from the beginning, and he says no, that he just accepted the request, and in this case, the request will be from the spirit children who were haunting the client, so he crushes the scoundrels there into a pile of dirt and debris and says he won't let them hurt anyone else, and that the children can rest, that their parents will be safe, and he apologized for not being able to do anything more than that. So back at base, the drone guy asks why he helped the children if human life is just a toy to him, and the Calamity explains that yes, they are toys, and toys make children smile, and that's why he would never abandon toys, and he plays with the drone there, which in this case is the spirit from the receptacle. So the drone guy understood that he was just expressing himself wrong. Just that, the guy is a really good guy with a character way above average, so the drone guy is surprised and relieved with him, and then reports everything that happened during his day to his boss, and she says that he won't need to worry about the other gangs, and that those guys there were really her scum, so some scoundrels who were still alive were planning revenge there, but, mysteriously, they were executed by someone. So Calamity is studying a book about vampires and says that with enough mana he could even turn the assassin into a vampire, and she gets really excited. The boss was then relaxing with some friends in the room, if you know what I mean, until she was interrupted by a phone call, and she refuses the client who wanted to execute Calamity, and goes back to having fun with her friends, if you know what I mean. So we go to a kind of bar for boys, where there are girls serving, and the drinks are really expensive, and it's precisely to catch the suckers, and a blonde guy asks about the boss of the assassins to a bartender there. Of course the bartender already disguises himself, saying he doesn't know anything, and the drunk blonde kept talking about the events, until he bumps into a girl, and the security guard catches him and is going to take a beating there to wake up. So back to Calamity, he explains the zombie's abilities, that she has become more resistant and less sensitive, and that she also has self-regeneration, and that if there are not many options to eat, she can even eat raw meat, which she will regenerate easily, and her saliva has paralytic effects, so if she bites someone, the person suffers paralysis immediately. So she goes there and bites Calamity, and the poor guy falls to the ground at the same time. The drone guy scolds him, and she asks if he wants a little bite too in a cute way, and then he sends a madwoman talking about politically correct things there, and she agrees all cutely, going along with him, while Calamity remains paralyzed like a garbage bag on the ground. A bandaged guy then investigates the place where were the scoundrels and disappears into the shadows when the police arrive. Then the blonde guy's partner from the bar calls him, and they are plotting something because the partner has already fainted there to some security guards of the bar, so it switches to Calamity talking to the two about the connection point of this world with another world. After all, he can use his powers of magic from the other world in this one, so what else exists from the other world in this one that they don't know? Then the Calamity actually tied a knot in the arms and legs of those scoundrels, leaving them alive, but unable to use their arms and legs from now on, and the blonde guy and his partner are actually police officers and go there to the crime scene. Now we are in the special division there, and the leader is the blonde guy. He presents the cases of the last murders and the wanted murderers and possible responsibles, sets up a plan to catch everyone, and says that they have already been through this and it must be some occultist, and they caught all the cases because they were very skilled humans, and if they are simple humans they can catch them because that never stopped them before, so they are like a special unit there for investigating supernatural crimes more or less. So the Calamity transfers the soul right in the stomach that made him fly. The girl crazy as always laughs and says that he is a strange guy who approached her, so it was self-defense, so she doesn't even complain, and smiles at Calamity, pulling her by the hand to run away with her. They finally managed to lose the police officer, since he was disoriented and could barely stand, and a curiosity, Calamity's body is also cold like the zombie killers. The police officer found the cold body strange when he touched him. There he is. Now the drone guy thanks him and belittles himself, saying that the police officer didn't lie, but Calamity encourages him with some motivational words. The police officer, now with the girl's footprint, asks them to investigate the mark that is of a potential suspect, and he didn't even need to, because the other police officer identified that it is identical to the one from the crime scene, and the police officer around him is afraid of the investigator because when he takes off his shirt he has a Yakuza tattoo mark on his back. Meanwhile he is excited about the case with this new information. Then other police officers talk about one of the wanted killers called Lamingo, who in this case would be the guy with the banners who disappeared earlier, and says that he is wanted for several cruel crimes from protection to murder and kidnapping, and the police officer says that he is a monster, that when he first saw him, The shots didn't hit and he finished off all the police officers in 30 seconds, and Kira is different, and the police officer says that he would like to take care of the case, but it is under another jurisdiction in the case of the blonde's group who even lost his promotion but is still a guy with fiber and trust. Then it changes to the scene of the blonde drinking and having fun with girls at the bar. He even gets eaten, and the boss knows that he doesn't have a warrant, so he went there to get information informally, so he stays there making jokes and asking questions while getting drunk there with the girls, and right at that moment the Calamity arrives with the girl and everyone is shocked. And of course the police officer scolds them for being underage, but they say that they won't order any alcoholic beverages, and at that moment the Yakuza police officer sends a message with the exact descriptions of the girl's clothing to the blonde police officer, and he calls the two asking for tips on what's in fashion, that he'll pay for some things for them there, to relax, eat, relax. With the amount of time he talks about what's in fashion, he tried to play the uncle. Meanwhile, the guy with the drone sees that the Yakuza cop is leaving with more cops heading to the bar, and in the meantime the so-called Lemigo killer is also jumping around the building like Spider-Man heading to the bar, and it turns out that the two accepted and the girl is there telling her crazy story, and Calamity is amazed trying the juice for the first time in her life. She even looks like Batista, but at the same time that the guy with the drone warns the cops arrive at the bar, he asks permission to come in and says that he is just a customer, at least for now, and the boss lets him in and the blonde signals for him to sit there with them. The girl recognizes him and says that he is the guy who tried to hit her and she beat him up, and he says that it wasn't exactly like that, and the other cop is like, bro, you did that, but he was just messing with the other guy. So the blonde says that he is going to ask some questions to both of them. After all, they don't want to be accused of obstruction of justice, but the lights are turned off at the same time, but the boss says no, it was her. From the receptacle to the plush shark, and the D's brother Ron gets all excited about having his toy back, so the receptacle gets shy because the assassin hugs him and the drone guy says he's another crazy guy. After all, he's getting really excited for a girl who executed him, and now the Calamity is after mana, both to create vocal cords for the receptacle that is now a stuffed shark and to replenish its reserve. It only needs negative emotions, resentment and things like that, and some evil souls to help too. Very simple thing, you can find it in your backyard. He explains that by exorcising these impure souls, they get mana in the case of necromancy, which is a type of necromancy, but that he also gets mana from precious stones like sapphires and diamonds, because they store mana, and the drone guy tells him to look at reality well. He sees that they are very expensive and reveals that in his world they were much more accessible to the point that children had them. He could even absorb just from be within reach, but the stones would break and it wouldn't be very fair to the shopkeepers. But suddenly one of the special class police officers appears and goes after the drone, possibly wanting recorded evidence. Meanwhile, the blonde leader of the unit is talking to the head of the murderers, interrogating her there in the bar in turns and asking her how involved she is in these murders, until, back there to the partner who stole the drone, who was leaving quietly, but Calamity asks for it back since it belongs to a friend, and the police officer is already labeling the guy with the drone the same way the church labeled Calamity in the other world, and he gets pissed off and the police officer moves away, but he hesitated and Calamity took the drone, but the police officer doesn't seem to be intimidated and seems to be more curious. In fact, the guy with the drone reveals that this police officer is not just any ghost, but that he already ended an entire gang by himself back when he was just a delinquent. The guy with the drone tells Calamity to hide his power since he is a cop, and if he finds out, he won't leave him alone. So the cop asks about the boy's parents and he answers that he doesn't know because he was sold, and then he hesitates because he was talking about his past life, and the guy with the drone gets apprehensive because they can't draw attention. The assassin frequents the boss's bar and he will also start to frequent it, and an investigation at this moment is not what they need, but the cop gets a call from the guy with the drone and he tries to negotiate saying that they are gaming friends to leave on time. The cop doesn't fall for it and refuses. Then the guy with the drone says that it would be bad. The video of him is hosting the boy and the girl on the internet, but still he is not intimidated. He reveals his past, that when he found the guy with the drone he cried for his life and turned in all his friends, and the cop calls him scum until the Calamity interrupts saying that regardless, the drone guy is better than this cop is now. He already sends a threatening look, which makes the cop tremble there at the base and even compares his aura to the high-ranking Yakuza leader. In the meantime, the girl disappeared and reappears behind him and gives a flying kick, and the two take the opportunity to sneak away, and the Calamity says that this time he will be the one to pull her by the hand, and the crazy woman jokes saying that he is being very bold, but the Calamity is scared by the presence of someone in front of him. Then the blonde sees the enemy all bandaged coming down from the ceiling, and the two police officers are already shitting themselves with fear. Imagine there, you are the god of the dead from a world of magic, but you reincarnate in the body of a normal child from Japan, only now you are involved with the police, Yakuza and murderers. You are watching Deadmont Dead Play, so leave a like to support the project, and that's it. After the triumphant entrance of the lemming, Everyone is scared, but the boss tells them to relax, because if he was really going to execute someone, he wouldn't have shown his face so clearly. The ex-Yakuza cop decides to gather his men and go after them, but in the meantime, Calamity sees that the lemming also has spirit manipulation, and Lemingo soon advances, finishing off all the cops. The Yakuza cop even tries to use his delinquent tricks to go after them, but fails miserably. Then Lemingo looks at Calamity and goes towards her, but in reality he stops right in front of the zombie assassin and she asks if it's with her, so he grabs her, throws her on his shoulders and kidnaps her. The Yakuza cop tries again and you already know he didn't have a chance. Calamity starts to think about if he fights the lemming, his peace will be shaken. If the cops see his powers, his peace will be shaken, so all he can do is run away from there to find himself. Preserve along with his peace, but he ends up using his powers and apologizes to his master who reveals his countenance there that he ended up becoming a fool, and outlines a look of regret while using his magic. Then the Calamity grabs the girl in the air with his giant skeleton arm, but the other police officers started using flashlights with cell phones so he has to be much more careful. All this while Lemingo advances fiercely towards the girl and he uses magic to try to stop him, but Lemingo reaches the girl. Near her he asks something and she jokes saying that she can't say that. Then he looks threateningly at Calamity and she says that he is a good person, and after that she tells Lemingo what he asked her, and then begins to attack Lemingo, attacking him with a fork that contained her saliva, since she was unable to break the messages. Now Lemingo is having the effects of the paralysis that his saliva causes. The Calamity then appears and says that it was not enough to erase him, but thanks him and says that the rest is with him, thus creating several magic seals around him, and finally giving life to a gigantic and complete skull form that only attacks the lemming, which in the next scene, is simply the bar turned over and destroyed and the police talking that it is better for them to pretend they did not see anything there. Then Lemingo gives satisfaction to a big executive that he apparently serves, details everything about what happened and points to the photo of the receptacle. Soon after it is the Calamity and the girl talking to the drone guy and walking on the street. The Calamity says that he managed to recharge his energies with all the negative energy that was surrounding Lemingo, then he apologizes and thanks at the same time for having saved him, in this case the girl, and having revealed his secret there to Lemingo. And she tells him to relax because he saved her too before. He then remembers his master's words about time and about helping whoever he wants, without hesitation. After all, he will live for many centuries. The Calamity then asks them to teach him about their lives and says that he does not want any peace if it makes him give up the few who smiled with him, even if for a short time. Then the executive appears knowing that the few who would be the receptacle are alive and says that he will soon solve this. Back to the Calamity and the people. The Calamity decides to open a store where he will make his pact with the ghost to help him earn money, but the drone guy takes the risk even though he is afraid because in fact the guy is a god of the dead and asks if he is crazy. Then one of the ghosts says he had an idea. In this case the ghost was possessing the mechanical pencil they're writing on the table, and basically it is about reading other people's fortunes, and the girl there wears some peculiar clothes, but no one uses magic. It is the ghost of the mechanical pencil who is a big scoundrel and is teaching them being charlatans. Very funny indeed, but they ended up using the drone guy's technology to identify the customers, and with this information the Calamity connects with the ghosts related to these people and passes information to the customers. So the Calamity is happy to have finally gotten his first money in this world and decides to divide it between five: him, the assassin, the drone guy, the receptacle and the pencil ghost. But the receptacle refuses and the drone guy says that he must be tired of seeing money in front of him, implying that he was a very rich person. But the Calamity couldn't understand this, and when the drone guy was going to explain, three men in suits invade the room and soon twins who are the receptacle's nephews appear. The Calamity puts on the hood and tries to deceive them. They're saying that he is the god of the dead, but they ignore him and say that they came as customers, making the atmosphere even more suspicious. But the Calamity says to come back another day, and the assassin says that they open at 10 in the morning. But the twins are arrogant, calling the others commoners and asking what they will do if they refuse, and the drone guy says he will call the police, completely breaking the mood, and the twins and the security guards are already shaking in their boots. So when they were going to retort, Calamity gets up and hugs them both, leaving them speechless, and tells them to relax, that he will protect them and that they will have a future. And in the meantime a ghost appears there, that in reality Calamity was talking to her, that she was begging her to protect the children, and Calamity confirms that she will do it, smiling and watching her. So Calamity decides that she will return to the receptacle's house the next day and talks to the twins and the killer and the drone guy who help her. Calamity discovers, thanks to the drone guy, that the receptacle is actually the second son of the owner of one of the biggest banks in Japan. He is soon surprised, and the drone's brother adds that if his father dies he will have a part of the inheritance, and that is already reason enough for them to want to put an end to it. in it if you know what I mean, and the Calamity he is already on the ground because all he wanted was a peaceful life. So Calamity reveals that he had 2 bodyguards in his world, a zombie tiger and a skeleton knight, but in Japan it would attract too much attention, so the role of the bodyguard goes to the zombie killer. So the twins go back to the car and find the executive from before, who is probably the first son of the family mentioned before since the receptacle is the second son, and says that he is anxious for Polka's return and tells them to be careful because another accident like before could happen, and the ghost already starts to turn over. Calamity finally arrives at the mansion of the receptacle and his nephews. There he is surprised by the size of the building, being even bigger than the aristocrats of his old world. Anyway, he is welcomed by his nephews, along with that suspicious boy from the last episode, and he asks what he is doing there, that he received a message about the vacation he took and everything, and Calamity says that he found his new self, and Misaki introduces herself in a totally cordial way, and elegantly surprising Calamity. Then Misaki says that Calamity has saved her several times in her attempts to end her own life. Calamity is as surprised as the others, and the suspicious boy says he didn't know he was with Isakia Pharaoh's daughter, and she says it's been a long time, so he apologizes and says that her family helped her a lot in the past, and it was really a shame what happened, but this guy doesn't fool me. I think he had a hand in the execution of her parents. We find out that the receptacle's brother is 48 years old and is the current head of the family, and this boy we see with his nephews is Polka's oldest nephew, his brother's son, who is the current leader of the corporation. He takes care of the company's security area, and they hire mostly ex-police officers who take care of the dirty work, and he manages everything. His name is Takaro. Then Takaro's wife hugs Misaki and says she can count on them, and is regretted by Takaro himself about not making promises that she cannot fulfill. The Calamity gets nervous there, perhaps because she cannot have good manners, and the receptacle helps him, but he is noticed moving, and when asked about what it is, the receptacle's other niece, who is unemployed and antisocial, explains the shark model in an exceptional way, including that it is a limited line. Then the Calamity meets another relative, and discovers the others, including the father and current leader of the Shinoyama group, is abroad. The atmosphere gets a little somber there in the middle of the presentations, but in the meantime the nephew's grandfather and boss there, and the receptacle's father who founded the corporation, appears surprising everyone and tells them not to forget him. He praises the film that the antisocial niece recommended, and she recommended more shark films to him. Then one of the relatives goes to talk to him about work, and he cuts him off saying that he should talk about it with his son and the current leader. The relative gets fed up with him, and he gives a magnificent cut, making the guy even leave the room there in shame, and he even says that if it was something urgent he would even pay attention, which was not the case. Then he calls Calamity and asks if there is anything for him to say. Then Calamity apologizes, and he says it wasn't that. To begin with, I got home, and he says welcome and calls him to hear the story better there with him, about how he helped the girl there in his room with the tatami, and apologizes to the girl and tells her to see the garden in the meantime. While the nephews retort about him not getting scolded, the ghost, who is the children's older sister, says that the fire is close there and continues to murmur about the hallway. Meanwhile, the Calamity continues to tell their adventures, and the boss seems to really believe until he asks who he is. The Calamity tries to change the subject, but the boss pulls it there and puts it around his neck and says not to underestimate him. He may just seem like an old man, but he has been through a lot, and besides, he is his father, right? And it doesn't need to make any sense, although it seems like he knows that it is not the real Polka. So the Calamity was going to speak, however, he senses something and says that the twins are in danger, and that he will explain everything later, and asks to trust him. The Calamity does not jump away quickly, and the boss realizes that it is not something human. A voice comes from the room saying that he should have executed him, but the boss says that his son's face was still there, and that he is not so heartless. An explosion occurs, surprising the boss. Then next, a memory is shown to us of the children who lost their bag in the garden, and she went there to get it, in this case, the older sister, and heard there a conversation about that relative and that he was reprimanded, who in fact is not him, and he was replaced, and the imposter burned his old body, and the other says they burned the twins. The sister gasps in fright and is noticed. She then runs quickly to warn the boss and the receptacle that they planned to execute the twins, but she was completely set on fire, and then she realized she was a ghost and continued asking them to protect the twins there. The man, who set the sister on fire and is still undercover, calls the twins, pretending that he would save them there from the supposed fire. The ghost begs him not to, while they follow him. Meanwhile, in a prison, the detectives interrogate an inmate who has experience with these supernatural cases, and along with the photos of them, he talks about a wanted serial killer who infiltrated a place and causes fires from the inside out, and who believes that it was this same serial killer at the orphanage, where the skulls appeared. Meanwhile, we are shown the mansion on fire exactly as the detective described the serial killer's old fires. He goes after the children with his high-voltage glove. The ghost tries to do something, but she can't do anything. But get me, she appears out of nowhere and gives 2 flying kicks in midair, in the arsonist's face, twice, not once, twice, before he falls to the ground. She says that she can't see her, but that she can rest assured that she and the Calamity came to save the twins, leaving the ghost surprised. Then the arsonist's fake face falls to the ground. She tells the children to go home. At first they resist, but soon they go after me. The waiter asks if he recognizes her there. After all, he must be one of them. And he confirms, calling her Saki, the killer of assassins. He sets the place on fire and goes up with a flying kick. He dodges, barely, and she doesn't care about fire. He wonders if she's really human, and she grabs an iron bar and disperses the fire, generating her. She says she's surprised he didn't go after the children, and he says it's simple, they have nowhere to run, and we are shown them cornered by the flames. The twins then, thinking it's their final moment, remember their older sister, and wonder if she should be mad at them, and they feel guilty for what happened in the past, and say they will apologize together when they find her. The ceiling collapses, but the Calamity arrives in time and tells them to remember the fortune reading, that they have a future, and also adds that their sister is not mad and that she is always worried about them and protecting them. The twins then go outside with the Calamity, and Takero says it's time to clean up the mess. Then cars they corner the imposter relative, and then a biker appears to finish him off in the middle of traffic, and to their surprise, the serial killer was actually an employee, and the Calamity says that there is no point in trying to deceive him, and sees the spirits above him asking for his face back. The female voice quickly becomes male and tries to escape, but Misaki, as always, arrives in the flying kick. It is already becoming a habit. Without a doubt my favorite character, the serial killer continues. Again with his flames and fights against the Calamity Misaki, he gives a speech about everyone being insects, but is interrupted by the masked lemming who arrives out of nowhere and sinks his face into the ground there. He makes a signal for them to dismantle the secret, and half-flames disappear. Misaki and the Calamity are totally confused about what is happening. Then Takero appears with the imposter relative who is still alive and says that the arsonist is already being escorted by the police. Then the girl who was in the house with the boss, Lemming, and some other people appear from the shadows, and the relative retorts about being the Dragon Palace agency, and Takero said he doesn't remember giving that name, that he just got together with the dangerous people who do dirty work there for the Shinoyama group. The relative tries to say that he was coerced by the serial killer, and Takero says he understands. He understands that he is dumb enough to attack his own family, and then the scene cuts. Wow, the kid is angry. Back to prison, the inmate goes crazy saying that he is not a serial killer but just a bad person who was provoking the path, in this case the one who was posing as the arsonist. He talks about humans who surpass their limits, maybe using magic or not, and some other unkind things there, and questions about something that the police are hiding and that they didn't reveal to him, and retorts if it isn't true. The detective just agrees and asks how he knows all that, and in the police car we discover that the real serial killer is there watching the other one, who was not only the imposter in the face but was also pretending to be him. So he starts to catch fire and the police officers get out of the car, just as the police car explodes along with the imposter double. Back to the beginning, Calamity asks the boss to leave them alone. The boss asks everyone to back off, and the boss asks him to explain now, and Calamity says that he probably won't believe it, but Calamity is not from this world. Back to the tavern, he calls the lemming Nizu and thanks him. Then the lemming explains that Polka would be the receptacle in this case. One of the twins arrived before him, and back to the boss. It seems that the Calamity told him everything, and he draws a sword and threatens Misaki. Since it was Misaki who executed Polka back there, Calamity prepares to act if necessary, but Misaki says she's not afraid of the boss, and if he decides to execute her, well, there's not much she can do. But then the receptacle, which is called Polka, jumps in front to protect him, even in her shark form, and the attitude makes the boss, who is his father, have a memory of when he was little and protected a person in the same way, and the boss is surprised and asks if his soul is safe, so he would just be asleep there in Calamity's current body, and Calamity says it's temporary, but the boss bursts out laughing because Polka seems super happy in his plush shark mode, so he decides to let it go and continues talking to Calamity there, and the boss says that if he gets another body, Polka can return to his old body. If that's the case, then he'll give him a cyborg body, and Polka is desperate, slaps the cell phone and tells Calamity that he wants to become the cyborg. He wants the flight and slingshot functions of the whole damn drill. The boss says that Polka seems fine, but that he didn't forgive the girl, but she saved his grandchildren. Polka thanks him, and Misaki smiles. The boss thinks a little more and thinks that apparently someone in the family wants Polka executed, and thinks a little more about the subject. Calamity talks to the drone guy about logistics, and Misaki apologizes to Polka for what she did before. Then the twins appear and apologize for before too, and Misaki gets all silly there. Then they also thank Calamity, and he says that he didn't do anything, but but rather the god of corpses that they visited when they went to sea there with their guardian spirit, leaving the twins there without understanding anything. But we see that their older sister is now happy and in her original form continuing to guard them. Misaki asks if Calamity intends to make a contract with her, but he says not for now, maybe someday, and look back and see her happy there with them. Back to the detectives, they say that the real serial killer is an arsonist who appeared there. The convict asks if he can have more information about the skeletons, and they say that they only intend to exchange information, and the convict says that then he will have to see for himself there, and the lights go out, and the convict runs away. Calamity had promised Polka that they would see his pet, and when they get there, they see an albino crocodile, and are surprised by Polka, and who he was defending before was actually this pet. Back to the detectives, they are in an emergency meeting after the Lonely Haunting, which is the name they gave to the convict who ran away there during the interrogation, so he reveals his criminal record, which was to steal a work of art from the museum and leave it there in front of a commercial building with the aim of giving a news scoop to Shinjuku YouTubers, and another was to paint one of the buildings so that it became transparent like a chameleon to people's eyes, making the building simply disappear, and they believe that it is related to a homicide as well, but there is not enough evidence. And the case that made him world famous, which was the disappearance of the Prime Minister, he simply threw a cloth over the guy, and when he removed the security guards they tried to find him, but he simply wasn't there, and the next day he simply kidnapped all the leaders of the opposition party, simple as that. And when the Prime Minister realized he was in an otaku coffee shop there reading manga, and he still points out that it was fun, and the detective crouches on the floor, because the Japanese security has become an international embarrassment with this incident, and says that he turned himself into the police saying that he does illusions, but believes in magic, and wanted to find someone who uses real magic, and that his crimes are to attract people there because they think he would be one of them, and that he wants to hire people who have real magic that he believes exist. And it's not just tricks and illusions that exist in his world, and his dream is to make the dreams of teenagers who believe in magic come true, and he doesn't care if he becomes a criminal to feed their dream. The blonde detective says he understands, then tells him to arrest him, and everyone beats him up and arrests him while the detective wonders what the hell just happened there. The naive GKE Calamity paid a high price for the old radio believing it would help him gather information, and Misaki appears disappointed after her beloved dress turned into a bunch of swindles. Meanwhile, the Calamity turns on the radio and comes across the news that the arsonist they arrested was a base, so the detectives are confused because they asked for a media restriction there so that the information wouldn't leak, and the Calamity and the drone guy talk about what happened, and the drone guy reveals that the one they're talking about there about the news is an urban legend in the city, just like the lemming, but that he even appeared enough in the media to be an urban legend. And at the same time the reporter takes off his glasses and reveals that he was an arsonist, and stands there all smug saying that to everyone's happiness he's back. The detectives reason that he must have bought the transmission with another wanted man called Grocer, who usually do this type of hacker attack. Then there is the solitary ghost on top of the roof talking alone with the real arsonist who goes to meet him. He receives a call, but it was the arsonist himself who called him, so that they would continue with their backs to the arsonist with an umbrella, creating all the suspense there. The magician even tries a card trick, but impatient, the arsonist burns the card and the magician continues to play with him. Calamity then asks if this man they reported on the radio was that powerful. Misaki says she even knows him, and the drone guy asks if there weren't people like that in his world. And he says that there were even some people, and remembers Ladiel, the slime witch, Delgar, the pirate mayor, Silk, the noble vampire, Medion, the rebel invisible golems, and Pani, the alchemy scholar in the floating laboratory. This should make a good anime. He also mentions the king's assassin and the dragon that was crushed by the knight we saw before, and who is known as the destroyer of calamities. Then Calamity talks about the dragons in his world, and who was surprised to have in their world more than there are there. Then the ghost of the pen tells them to make comparisons between the two worlds. But in the meantime, back to the lonely ghost and the arsonist, they are dueling amicably, while the lonely ghost says that he didn't mean to criticize him for having called there before, even though he was close by. After all, magic is basically wasting time and effort, and he loves the concept of wasting and exaggerating, which is part of his magic. And not wasting and exaggerating is like robotizing things, and so you end up wasting your emotions anyway. I thought it was pretty crazy, but he does have a point, bro. But the arsonist, who was impatient, burns his balloon in the air. The guy doesn't care, he's still pissed off that he was able to contact him even though he didn't leave any traces. But the magician is alive and ends up agreeing with the arsonist's nihilism about life being only joy and pain. And comically, after agreeing there, the the magician still says that he's never thought about the meaning of life, but that it's not worth arguing with him. Then the magician appears on top of the umbrella and tells him that he must be wondering why the hell he doesn't feel the weight of it. And the magician says that it's just an illusion, that there's a trick behind it, and that his fire is like that too, and that he's disappointed that it's not magic. But he talks about the case of real magic involving skeletons and tries to recruit the arsonist to his cause. The arsonist then asks what he will do if he decides that such and such a person with magic deserves to be burned, and the magician says he will think about it. So, back to the Calamity and the people, they say that the criminals in their world must be nothing to the Calamity, and he says that is not quite the case. The lemming, for example, would be a lot of trouble in his world. Then they knock on the door and they put the human drone to answer the door. Then they come across Polka's sister, who is the antisocial one and the oldest of the twins, a giant shark, and a girl carrying a giant suitcase with her, and they don't understand anything. She then enters, throws the shark on the couch and says that she came because she wanted to start living there, and everyone wonders, okay, but why was it here? So she introduces herself to everyone and says that her name is Seo, and in reality, it is a boy who is accompanying her holding her luggage, and says that he is an apprentice butler. And Seo reveals that her sharks were burned, and the butler explains that the fire destroyed her sharks, along with her room, which was also burned. And the boss left a video there recorded with the butler, saying that Polka and Seo's rooms were burned in the incident. She asks him to let Seo and the young guard live there for now, but he is wary of having the two of them in that building, so Calamity realizes that they are being watched and has placed several security guards around the building. Then she wakes up in the morning and Seo has fallen asleep inside the shark, which is apparently a kind of Fulton. He says good morning, she reflects on life and says she respects his opinion of having a good day and saying good night. Then the others arrive, try to cheer her up, but she says that if they really want to cheer her up, the best way is with shark things. Then the butler begins to prepare breakfast, while talking to everyone amicably, and says that for now it is better for them to stay there, as things in the mansion are agitated and with the detectives investigating the incident there. In the mansion then we see the two detectives interrogating a maid, and then Takaro and his bodyguards intercept them. Then they ask for collaboration and then tell Takaro about the arsonist, and Takaro says he is unaware of such information. The detectives insist, and then he starts kicking the wound, saying that the arsonist has become a great nuisance to the Shinoyama family, because he burned down the buildings of their clients and he expected the police to arrest him, and he also adds that there is no point in capturing him if he is going to let the criminals escape, again with kicks and leaving the lead detective completely embarrassed. And he also adds that he hopes they capture the criminal who escaped soon, because in the past he made the company's shares fall drastically, even though they had no involvement, and he hopes that this time the police will collaborate so that the shares don't fall. Wow, just quality kicking. This guy has certainly watched too many Mexican soap operas. The delinquent detective at the exit claims that his security guards are also killers, that he felt that they have the same aura as him, and the lead detective says that they should prepare to go against the Shinoyamas, and shows a portrait he saw there on the wall that looks like Polka, in this case the Calamity, and asks the other detective if he remembers the face, and above them Takaru was watching everything. The security guard asks if he should erase it, but he says no. As soon as they discover Polka's secret, they could be very useful to him, but it seems that the boss is pulling some strings there, and returns to Seo and the mini butler. Misaki and Calamity leave them in their new room and return to the living room. Misaki asks if he is excited about having fun with more people, and Calamity says yes with a similar concern. The mini butler is not just anyone, he put the wiretap in the room and sees everything they say. I even believe that he was there in the room previously protecting the boss when Calamity asked them to be alone. Soon after, it is confirmed that this is indeed the case. The boss asked the mini butler to protect the fake Polka and Seo there, but the mini butler didn't like the idea very much and intends to go against the rules there and end the fake Polka, and even said that if he finds the real Polka he will execute him too. There are secrets here that have not yet been revealed, and then he reveals the secrets, that he has always been jealous of the real Polka, that he wanted to be admired by the boss, and that he does not accept that a weakling like Polka is the successor of the family. His past is also revealed to us, that in his first mission he lost so many limbs, arms and legs, and his father wanted to disinherit him. Unfortunately there are monsters like that in real life. And then, when the mini butler was furious with his father, the boss, who we will now call Rosen, arrives and asks about the boy's case. The father was planning to use the boy to grow poisons that only grow in the entrails of children, and Rosen tells him not to do something so barbaric, or if you want to recite that, his clan sees themselves only as tools. It's like the ninjas and assassins who served large families, and apparently they have Chinese descent. Rosen then says that if he only sees him as a tool, that he can sell him to him. His father refuses because he wants to use him as a poison container, and that if Rosen wants, it will be expensive. Rosen says that it's okay and that he will even give him technology so that he doesn't have to do that stupid stuff with poison to gain in life. Rosen then appears to the little boy and tells him not to think that he is a good person, but that he just wanted a guinea pig for his tests, and that maybe after he could move again, he will be able to hear Rosen talk about his family, showing a big smile in his affection when he said that, really, a man with a big heart. In short, the boy is a big ingrate who is going against Rosen's rules out of pure envy. After that, we go back to the head of the assassins and his little friends having fun, and it seems that the animator was having fun too. He exaggerated this scene a lot. They talk about the possible betrayal within the Shinoyama family and that this person wants to die right away. And the head of the assassins keeps talking about how influential the Shinoyama family is, while unnecessarily joking with one of her friends, and we are shown that totally unnecessary scene. Going back to Calamity, he continues talking about dragons, for example the dragon that turned into a woman there to deceive kings, but ended up falling in love with a general and they ran away together when the empire collapsed. Can you believe it? And talks about the different types of dragons there, and the mini butler thinks they are talking about video games and mangas. Then he hears the sound of bones and we are shown that Misaki was dancing with the skeletons there, and the mini butler thinks they are playing there, and Calamity comments that the mini butler is very dedicated and who is still awake protecting Seo's door, and the mini butler looks for the cameras but finds nothing and still doesn't understand how the Calamity knew about that. Then the detectives open an investigation for Polka and we discover that the original Polka is only 16 years old, so they make a summary of all the evidence they found so far involving him and add that he is a lucky reader now, and that the crazy magician would love that very much. And speaking of the devil, he appears leaving an arcade and says that magic games have evolved a lot while he was in prison, and says that he has more than 6 days to finally be able to plan his plan before the date set with the police. In the meantime, he was walking freely on the street and is found by guards, and comically he runs away. Meanwhile, the arsonist watched everything with his umbrella with fire safety written on it, even becoming ironic. Back in the Calamity, he and Misaki prepare to go back to reading fortunes, and in the meantime the detectives appear at their fortune-telling shop. The lead detective greets him and says that they haven't seen each other since Clarissa's bar, who is the head of the assassins, and asks if he can read his fortune there. I have a feeling that it's going to be shit here, but we've reached all the current episodes, so if you liked it, leave that naughty like here because your support motivates me and helps me to continue. Subscribe if you've just arrived and are approving. Take the opportunity and comment here which part you liked the most and which part you were most outraged by, and comment here if you want the continuation so I can continue bringing the episodes of Death Mount Death Play here. I'll see you soon with another long video there. I'll be here once again and we're together, gang.